From CRI Simple Numbers, this is Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers Podcast, a podcast for those who champion market growth and anchor the nation's economy, small businesses, and entrepreneurs.
All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Simple Numbers Profitability Playbook podcast. I always love that intro. I'm Mike Maxson. That's Brandon Gray. We're going to talk about, we're going to kick it off today with some return on investment. And then Brandon decided that he wants to get into some military stuff with me. So, Brandon, kick it off.
Well, it's great Mike stories about the military.
Yeah, I do have 5 things. I did the typical listings, 5 things, and then a bonus thing that's totally me after that. So
yesterday was Veterans Day, so it's on top of mind for everyone. So yeah, well, let's kind of kick off just a few minutes about return on investment. So this is a question that we're getting quite often as teams are planning what they want to do for the upcoming year and the investments that they want to make in their business. And so how do you know if something is a good investment? What type of return should I look on the investment? Those kind of things. So we'll chat a little bit about that, and we'll shift gears and have some fun hearing some stuff from Mike's tenure in the U.S. Army. So when it comes to return on investment, most everybody that's listening is likely a business owner or an executive with a business. And so you think about your business just like you would any other investment. You've put a lot of money into that business. You've put a lot of sweat equity into that business. And just like with any investment, you expect to get a return. So what's a good return and what should we shoot for and how do we look at it? So we'll kind of go through a few of those things. First of all, when we look at return, we go back to the data that we have going back several years with our client base to determine what did they invest inside their business. And so if you pull out a balance sheet, which I probably gave everybody jitters there because most folks don't look at their balance sheet, but if you pull out your balance sheet, you're going to see this line at the bottom and it says total equity. And it's kind of this weird number that moves around that you really can't wrap your hands around. What does it mean?
Oh, Brandon, real quick, hold up. What is equity, man? I mean, it confuses people, but yet we all talk about it all the time when it comes to our house, right? Rental property. So
pretty easy to understand with real estate, and that's the approach that I typically look at it in. So take a piece of property. Let's just say the value of that property is what you paid for it. Well, you've got an asset. You look on your balance sheet, you have assets, things that you own. Then for most properties, there's this mortgage thing on it. You owe the bank, you owe someone else. So it's a liability. If you look on your balance sheet, you got liabilities. Well, pretty straightforward math when we think about real estate. The difference between what you own and what you owe is your equity in that property. And the same is true of your business. The difference between what you own, assets such as cash, receivables, hard assets, equipment, furniture, fixtures, minus what you owe, accounts payable, notes payable, credit cards, all those things. The difference between those two is your equity. And so you kind of can think about equity like this. If you were to lock the door on the way home today with your business, said, I'm not going back. I'm going to take my cash. I'm going to collect my receivables. I'm going to pay off everybody I owe. The number that is left is your equity. And so every day that you keep the business open, you're making that decision that I'm going to keep the equity because I could close the business and take it all out. I'm going to keep it instead invested in that business. So then what kind of return does that equity produce? So you look at return in terms of profit. So if I've got, let's just say $1 million of equity invested, then I look to see, okay, well, what type of income did that generate for the past 12 months? What type of profit did it generate? Let's say it generated another $1 million. I got 100% return on investment. That's pretty good. So we look at that data to determine, what do we see typically? And here's a number that'll blow a lot of you guys away. 50%. A profitable, if you're running at about 15% of gross margin, a healthy, profitable business typically will generate a 50% return on investment. So, Mike, where do you go and get a 50% return on investment at?
Drugs.
Drugs, exactly. I actually had somebody give me that answer one time. But nonetheless, there's not a lot of places that you legally can go and get a 50% return on investment. And look at that, and you go, well, the stock market over the course of any 20-year period is probably closer to 10%. A much less risky investment than putting your house and livelihood on the line in a small business. And so you expect a high return because of the risk you're taking. So if we use that 50% as kind of our threshold, that then becomes a good filter to use as you're looking at investments. So let's just talk about a couple of those. So Mike, what's something that your clients are considering investing in the upcoming year?
Marketing.
What else?
Labor,
people. Those are investments as well.
Yep. And then just overall spends in the business to help be more efficient. So software systems, stuff like that as they grow, administrative software, stuff like that.
Those are the most popular, marketing, people, software and processes, things that would speed things up, make you more efficient. Could be AI, those kind of things. Or just a handful. Sometimes it's a new territory that you're going to go into. Sometimes it's an acquisition of another business or another revenue stream. Whatever it may be, the goal is that I put dollars to work today to generate a return later. And so what we use marketing for an example. If I'm going to put an extra $100,000 into marketing, and by the way, we talk about this in Simple Numbers 2.0, so if you don't have a copy of that book, go out to our website and get a copy of that. So I'll give you the details. But if I'm going to put $100K into marketing, I got an additional $100K in expenses for this year. I should see my profit go up by at least $50,000 from the prior year. That's 50% of the 100 investment.
You want the 100 back though, right?
Yeah. I mean, so as you look at year over year, the 100's already in your P&L as an expense.
Mm-hmm.
So I should see my net profit go up by 50K. And if you kind of whittle that down and start to look at it, you got to generate a lot of revenue to create an additional 50K in profit. Now, your overhead may not change substantially, but theoretically, if you generate more revenue, you've got more direct costs, you got more labor costs. You might have a little bit more overhead depending upon where you are in the business. So what comes in net should be at least 50% of that investment. Now, the time could vary. It's another question we guess. Is that always within a year? Well, for something like marketing, hopefully so. I mean, that should be fairly quick in most businesses, unless you just have a really long time from implementation to sale. Unless you have a backlog. Other things like people might take more than a year. You look at it and say, hey, we're going to hire a new operations manager. And we think through that, we'll increase efficiencies. We'll be able to monitor and track and make sure everybody's working effectively. And it might take more than a year. Usually the longest, and this gets out there if you're talking like acquisitions and revenue stream additions and those kind of things. Most entrepreneurs want to get their dollars back within 3 years. That's usually the longest. So somewhere between a year and 3 years, 12 and 36 months is what you're looking for. And if possible, not in all cases, but if possible, if you can tie back that spend to the revenue and profit that you generate, then you really can hone in on, okay, that really did work for me. So that's just a quick and dirty kind of view of what you want to target, what you want to shoot for. I like to propose that to our clients' teams. So best story there, had a client years ago that their team was always wanting to go to a conference, which can be great, can be a great investment. It also can be just a really expensive, fun trip for your team. So if you're going to go to a conference or a trade show, it's to get a return. And so, they'd come to us and they'd say, hey, how much money can we spend going to the conference? And I'd flip it over and I'd say, well, how much do you need to spend? And they'd give me the number. And let's just say it was, $30,000 with travel, conference, booth, sponsorship, you name it. And I would ask them then, I'd say, okay, well, if we spend 30, we got to get our 30 back and make another 15 in profit. And we would work through the number of clients or sales that they'd have to generate for that to happen. And then I would just ask them, okay, can you generate this amount? And in some cases they would go, yeah, that's easy. That's like 2 clients. That, our track record of going to conferences, we minimally always get 5 clients. Okay, great. Go do it. In this case, they looked at the number and said, well, there's no way we would ever get that back. And it's just too much in sales. And the last 3 conferences we went to, it hasn't generated anything. Well, there's your answer. So nonetheless, you kind of can put that back on your team to get them to think like an investor as well. It's not always about coming to you for a license to spend. It's about, if I approve, you're like you're on Shark Tank. If I approve a spend, can you generate a 50% return on that?
I like using too, sort of like a lumped up example of OpEx. When you'll see a company, they might, let's go from 22 to 23, they grow by 20%. And they're like, man, we have it dialed in. We have our sales. We're going to go for 30. We're going to go for 40%. But over this next year, we're going to invest in, we got to get a bigger facility. We're going to up our marketing spend. I've added 3 people to my management team. Obviously, your payroll taxes and benefits are going to increase from that. And by the way, I had to get some other things for the business in here to help grow. And I just increased my OpEx spend by $500,000 year over year to grow this 30%. And then when you sort of do the ROIC calculation on that whole OpEx investment, and again, I get some of it might not exactly be some launch capital, but seeing them go, wow, I'm going to invest $500,000 in this, and I want to see that bottom line go up by $250. Then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, we gotta look at something. Yeah.
So let's see if you got questions on that. We're happy to chat further. As I said, we go into a lot of detail on that in Simple Numbers 2.0. Let's shift gears a little bit here. So we'll kind of close it out. Yesterday was Veterans Day. So Mike, thanks for your service. For those of you that don't know, Mike served in the U.S. Army, was overseas on tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. So he's done some things, seen some things, and I think, he's probably going to share with us in just a moment some lessons learned that you can apply as you run your business. As we're out kind of on the battlefield that is the economy, you got to have a great team. You got to have a great plan. You've got to execute. And, in those situations that Mike and many of our others that have served were faced in, if you didn't execute, you didn't come home. So, obviously the cost there was a little bit higher in terms of the consequences. But Mike, just kind of share with us a couple things there. What are some things you learned in your training in the military that you use every day as you help business owners?
Yeah, appreciate that. Real quick, little context. I joined back in 2004. I was in the Army the day after I graduated college. I was a college athlete, played baseball, scholarship, and when I was actually joined my junior year because I was like, majors aren't for me, I guess. And but I did want to do something else, and I could not sit behind a desk. So I did go enlisted. I was not an officer or anything like that, so I had to chew the dirt. I had visions that if I would have stayed in, I probably would have went that route, but wanted to have some fun first. So I went in as an explosive ordnance disposal operator. If you've ever seen that movie, The Hurt Locker, I'll keep my review comments on that to myself. But that's what we did. We disarmed IEDs, destroyed ordnance. We were very much a part of everything going on overseas, from special operations missions to regular route clearance to standard patrolling down the street. You name it, we were always there because of the threat. And so these are the things that I picked up on. And now again, I came in slightly older, just barely 22 when I started. And so I had a little bit of perspective on sort of some of the things you might need, especially from being a career athlete and things like that. But these were 5 things. And then I just got a bonus one for you that I, that's pretty funny, but I hope our teams can do that. And by the way, these first 5 are in no particular order. So the first one is training. Clearly, when I was in Iraq, this is pre-surge, before we had the surge, it was pretty wild over there. We were losing at the time probably about like 100 guys a month. And we were running 5 to 10 IEDs per day for 6 straight months. We had 1 casualty in there, a couple injuries, but for the most part, we did a pretty good job with an area operations the size of New Hampshire. Our training was nonstop, every day, all day, scenarios, situational. We made each other mad. We made it difficult for each other, but it was nonstop. Every scenario, everything you could go through, we threw twists and turns in there. Training is so important. And even at that time, you didn't realize it until then you did it. And then, holy cow, I'm actually in it now. And I remembered, wow, someone starts firing at me. I should definitely take cover. I know that seems basic, but when you practice it over and over, it's amazing how fast you do it. It's amazing how fast you can reload your magazines. It's amazing how fast that if I look down and IED happens to be there and I didn't know it was there, how fast I can pull them wires out and identify what a blasting cap is, or look at something and see, hey, this is what potentially could be going on with this scenario here, right? We had a lot of IEDs that they'd show you one, but there's definitely one buried, or maybe a third one buried somewhere else trying to get you. So training that over and over is important. So train your teams. The next one is obviously teamwork. You had to obviously do this together, be hard on each other in the process, expect a lot out of each other, and know that, like, hey, this is going to get real. And so being able to work with one another, these are people from all different backgrounds, walks of life, culture, nationality, you name it, we were 100% different. I am a lily white boy from Erie, Pennsylvania, dealing with maybe someone of a completely different background from Los Angeles or Cincinnati or Florida or whatever, or maybe not even America. Some of the cases they moved here and their family was from maybe Mexico or something like that. You had to work with each other, get along with each other, learn about each other, spend time with each other. Super important, that team building side of it. And then, by the way, the next one is then trust. So you had to trust each other. You had to trust each other to do the job. So you had to see them involved in that teamwork, involved in the training, to then say, hey, when I go down range, I know someone's got my back. When I know those bullets are flying, they're going to be firing back and not hiding. You had to see that, and that built that trust to say, hey, I can go out there with that person and do the right thing. The next thing is the personal development of that person, and so of yourself and of that person. Obviously, I was an athlete, so I did it, but I still get up super early, ask Brandon, every day and work out. Yes. That's what we did. Yeah. 3:30 every day, that alarm goes off, and I hate it. I still complain. But I do it, and I always have done it, and we all did it, and we worked out. We tried to better ourselves. In the military, if you want to move up rank, you had to do different things. You had to go to schools. You had to max your PT test. You had to ace your shooting. All of this required you putting in the time, even outside of your Army training. And so we were always shooting guns. We were always working out. We were always doing dumb stuff like running up and down mountains with Brandon. Before I ever started here, I was over here in the mountains, just training, because I was an instructor here before I got out. And I had my GPS, and of course, poor planning, ran out of batteries. I was stuck up in these mountains over here. So I didn't even know. And I didn't know what to do. And so I just busted down a draw, which basically anyone wants to know about land navigation, busting a draw is not fun. Okay. And I went all the way down, and I just ended up in some neighborhood. No idea where I was at. I've only been in Huntsville at this time, like 6 months. I was training for this spec ops unit I was looking to go into. And those are types of things where I was just like, hey, I'm going to go out and walk 10 miles today. And that's what we did. So that time you went to war, by the time you did those things, you're ready to go. And so building yourself up, being healthy, minus the beer trekking we probably did, which you probably can acquire, student military guys do that. And yes, we do. But outside of that, we work out a lot too, at least high performing and functioning soldiers too. The last of the 5 things is leadership. And so remember, leadership, I still remember it to this day, is the influencing of people through purpose, direction, and motivation in order to influence the organization or accomplish the mission, right? And then, so that is the definition of leadership. In the military, leadership is just that. How do you influence people? And how you influence people goes right into those other things. Do you train? Do you trust them? Do you have teamwork? Do you develop yourself? The best leaders did those things. When it came time to clean weapons, you didn't clean weapon and then your team leader not do it. Your team leader sat there and cleaned weapons with you. When there was something difficult to do, your team leader was right there doing it with you. those are the type of people that are these, what I learned would be the best leaders, are the ones that you can see it. And I'll use Greg Crabtree as an example. I'll use my man Brandon there as an example. In corporate world, they are excellent leaders because they're doing that stuff. You don't see Greg Crabtree here. He's not golfing. He's on the road. He's out speaking. He's doing client calls from the airport. One of the hardest workers I know. My man Brandon there, the same thing. Always available, always working. And that is what you look for in the leader. And I realized in the military, the best leaders are the ones that were always there with their guys, doing their thing, and obviously making an impact. If you knew they weren't there must have been a good reason. They were going to get yelled at, take part in briefings, do something that they were doing. All right, and the bonus thing, this is one that I wish more people knew today that helped. But the last thing is embracing the suck, okay? One thing about the military is that we had to do just some god-awful things. We had to clean god-awful things. If someone screwed something up, we all ended up having to get in trouble for it. You're sleeping in a hole. You're sleeping on top of a mountain. You're using a sandbag as a pillow somewhere. You hadn't showered in 3 days. You're tired. Your legs hurt. All that. It's just awful. But being able to accept that and welcome it, know that the guy to your left and right is dealing with the same thing, builds that shared sacrifice that I've talked about here before. Is like, hey, where's that shared sacrifice? They know that stuff that's a little bit miserable, a little bit difficult that we all have to deal with. I tell Brandon all the time, I'm like, I have a massively high pain tolerance. One time we got in trouble and we all had to pull guard on various objects around the company for hours. And so, for example, I guarded a trash can, full gear with a weapon for 4 hours, all because someone forgot to close the classified safe. When you get a call at 3 a.m. on a weekend because someone did something stupid, like got a DUI, and we all have to come in and sit there just because it is. And so it's embracing that suck and understanding that, hey, things are going to be difficult, but there is light somewhere, and eventually it will end, and eventually you won't die from it. And so those are some of the fun things we learned. So hope that helps, but it all applies to business.
Oh yeah, definitely. Some great lessons in there. I'm sure we'll be talking more about those in some future episodes as we kind of expand upon it. But thank you, Mike, obviously for your service, and some good things that we can pass on to the listeners today. So
awesome. Well, all right. Well, we appreciate you all hanging with us today. Another nice, short and sweet with some good info. Hope you got something out of it, and we will see you next time.
Well, good.
Take care. See you.
If you want to know more about driving sustainable profitability for your business, or are interested in learning more about CRI Simple Numbers, please visit our website at simplenumberscri.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers podcast. You can subscribe to Profitability Playbook on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. If you liked what you heard today, please leave us a review. The views expressed on Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers podcast, are those of the presenter and moderator and do not necessarily reflect the views of CRI Simple Numbers or the CRI family of companies. This podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to replace professional advice received directly. Consult with your CRI Simple Numbers advisor or another trusted professional if you have questions about your specific situation.